Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Abe with Mystic Jen Mara, and today I would like to talk about two different books which are kind of the same book. The first one is Heal Your Body by Louise Hay, and the other one is You Can Heal Your Life. And the reason I say they're kind of the same book is in the back of this one is this one. But what I was going to go about with this is she's been one of my kind of an influence in my health and healing practice ideas, not so much my spiritual. So this book, this was the first one of hers that I actually picked up. Giving some background on Louise, she was born very poverty-ridden, and she had a very rough life, and there's a movie about her life and kind of how she came to founding Hay House. And she was one of the first female, if not the first female, publishing house owners. And Hay House has dedicated itself to only publishing spiritually uplifting and healing books. And if you go to their website, and I'll link it in the description, and I am not sponsored, just FYI, they've focused on healing, alternative healing methods. Some of it is actually written by actual doctors that have discovered that maybe mainstream medicine doesn't have all the answers, and that's cool. But what she discovered in this book, and she actually self-published it originally, she was a member of the Church of Religious Science in, I believe, her 30s, so this was around 1970-ish. She discovered that what we think about and our emotions actually affect our physical body. It affects us in disease, it affects us in health. Even something as minor as a common cold can be affected by how we're thinking. And she was a counselor. She went through the program that the church offered, and she became a counselor. Over time, she started to notice very specific patterns. The one thing that I've noticed in the interviews that I've watched with her is she paid attention to people's patterns and habits. It was a really interesting thing that she always picked up on. Well, through that, she figured out how different physical issues would be associated with certain phrases or certain thought patterns or emotional patterns. And it was just interesting to listen to her talk about how she eventually wrote out this list, and it's this list right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, and it gives a physical part of your body, the mindset that goes along with it, and then the positive affirmation to fix the issue or at least help you work through it. And like each one of them is very unique, and she even goes through the body and on the back with different parts of the spinal column that affect different parts of the body. And it's simple things like any issues with your hips. It could be something that you're carrying, your body's not being carried in perfect balance, and things are moving forward and you can't control it. Well, she has a affirmation. In the East, they would call it a mantra that you can repeat to yourself 3, 7, or 10 times, and then allow it to just feel the change that occurs, because you will notice a change even in something minor. And then throughout the day, you just keep repeating these mantras, or affirmations if you prefer the term. And it's not just her observations. Over time, because of some of the things that happened in her life that she had repressed, she actually developed a form of cancer. And I won't say on YouTube what the cancer was, but you can watch her movie or read her books and find out. But it was a pretty aggressive cancer, and it showed up almost out of the blue. Doctors told her that there's not much they can do. They can put her on chemo, and she might make it, she might not. And this was before some of the advances, so it was still, an iffy thing with chemo and radiation. Well, she was talking to her counselor in the church, and the church was like, "You have helped so many people. Why are you panicking over this? You can fix this." And she took it to heart, which is something that, to me, it takes a leap of faith, and a lot of us in today's culture don't want to take that kind of responsibility. Well, she was willing to take the responsibility, and she went through the process, and it took her about 6 months, I think she said, but it was intensive therapy, crying, learning forgiveness, learning what she had repressed that triggered this issue. And as she worked through the process, her body naturally healed itself. She then turned to a healthier lifestyle instead of, she was eating, I think she said Pepsi and Cheetos or something like that. She'd cleaned up her diet. She'd gotten more into organic foods, started raising her own gardens and things like that. But in the course of a 6-month time period, she went from, we don't know if you're going to live through this, to, where's your cancer? And it was strictly changing the aspects of her life that weren't healthy. The thing that I love about this book is it goes into detail about which part of the body. Like, it could be anything from teeth issues to baldness even, bites from different animals and spiders, incontinence, and it's done in alphabetical order. And she usually uses the scientific name for a term as well as the common term for it. And with that one, my recommendation or my suggestion is to pick up a copy. They're like $7. It's really not that big of a deal. It's as far as price goes, and there's only 80 some odd pages. And then at the very back of it, she has what she called a loving treatment. So you go through and you get into a meditative state or calm your mind. You say your affirmation however many times. A lot of times she would tell people to say it until you feel a click. Like, say it until it actually settles into your mind. And it can take up to 17 seconds or it can take up to 2 hours. It just depends on what you've got time for and how resistant you are to feeling better, because sometimes that is a problem. But at the end of it, she would have there's what she would call a loving treatment. It's 2 paragraphs, and just to read over it, but read over it in a way that you're feeling it, so that it's actually sinking in, and understand with everything that she was doing, what she was wanting to explain to us is we have a natural healing system. It was given to us by God source energy, and it was made for us to use. When something did come up, it was a way for us to reconnect and fix our bodies, because they aren't supposed to fall apart like they do. And so that was her focus with all of the work that she did. In her big book, this one, You Can Heal Your Life, she gives exercises throughout the book talking about ways to work with forgiveness, different ways to work with the affirmations. There are lots of exercises. I think there's like 12 exercises, 10, 12 exercises, something like that, through the book. And what I was advised when I first picked this up, it was a friend of mine that told me about it, because I already had the other one, and they're like, oh, if you like that, you should definitely get You Can Heal Your Life. And they said, when you do this, you want to get a blank notebook, and before you even open page 1, write down where you're at, what your emotions are, where your thoughts are, where your body is. Just kind of give an overview of where you are at, and then start going through it. Every time there's an exercise, do the exercise, mark the date down, and if you come to an exercise, do the exercise and read into the end of that chapter. Don't read any further. That way you can actually process what you have just went through. Sometimes it'll be simple processes, but be honest with yourself. And that's the big one with Louise Hay's books, these two in particular, is be honest. Don't say, oh, well, I did the meditation 5 times and it didn't do anything. But were you being open with yourself? Were you actually understanding what was being said? Were you willing to take and look at what is going on in your subconscious that is physically manifesting in fill in the blank issue? And that is where the trick comes in with all of this. And that's the reason I was told, get the journal, start off that way. And I recommend, if you're going to pick up this book, get the journal and start doing the same thing. Write out where you're at, what your emotions are, where your thoughts are. And it doesn't matter if it's a continual thought or just that day. Write it down. And physically where you're at. And then start going through the book. And when you start coming up to these different things, if you feel resistance to it, do it twice. And that's because if you're feeling resistance, according to everything in her work, it's because that's where your problem is. You don't want to fix it. Your ego gets in the way and you're like, no, that can't be it. That's probably where the problem is. But what I would suggest with these books, both of them, is get the journal, read through this one, and if you only can get one, get this one. It is about $15, and I'll link the website in the description. And be honest with yourself if you're going to go through this book, because it is extremely helpful, and it does not, and this is a big one, it does not tear down any religion. It doesn't tear down any form of spiritual belief. What it does is saying, you were given a gift by God, by the divine, by source energy, and you've forgotten how to use it. We have been conditioned to rely on outside forces to fix inside problems. That's fine, but you also need to understand that if you're having a chronic condition, it's probably because there's other things at play other than the doctor saying there's this chemical imbalance. Okay, well, your brain is a chemistry set. Learn how to fix the chemistry problem. Like I said, I'm not being flippant when I say that, it's being honest. I have worked through, when I first got this book, I would get continual migraines. I was getting 2 a month on average, where it would debilitate me. I couldn't be in daylight, the nausea, the misery, and it would usually hit when I was really stressed out, and then I'd be out of work for 2 or 3 days because I'd just be sick with massive migraines. Well, I started going through and doing the affirmation with this, as well as the meditation and, drinking lots of water, just trying to fix the problem because I couldn't figure out what was triggering it. And it finally worked out because I was dealing with a lot of stress, and it was stress that I felt like I was alone and I couldn't handle things, and that the world was on my shoulders and it was triggering these massive headaches. And I can tell you, after doing these affirmations, I haven't had a migraine. I've had 1 migraine in the last 15 years, where it literally laid me up where I couldn't get out of bed. And it was because I had slipped into the bad pattern again. And then I went back through and I checked and tried to figure out what was going on. And it was, again, I was taking too much on. I was overstressing myself over something dumb. And once I figured it out, the migraine went away. I haven't had one since. So it's one of those things where our body warns us with a lot of illness. Sore muscles can be from working out, but if it's a spontaneous sore muscle, where is it at in your body? Go to the book, see what's going on, and most of the time, and I mean most of the time, you're going to have an answer very, very clearly from the descriptions along the spinal column, especially if it's something in your back. Other places are also listed in there, so it's like your eyes, your head, your back, your neck, shoulders, things like that. But just as a kind of an overall view, I would recommend this just because it's good for helping break through, especially if you have like depression or anxiety. This kind of stuff can be helpful if you're willing to be honest. That is a huge, huge part of this, is be honest with yourself. Go be somewhere quiet for a little while and let those emotions out. Put them on paper. If you need counseling, go find someone if it's a private counselor, go find one that you feel that you resonate with, or if you have someone you trust deeply, then go talk to them and help work through these issues. But like I said, this book is really helpful, and it's really impressive with the amount of information, especially when you realize that she barely graduated high school. I think she had to take a GED, actually. She didn't do college, and she figured this out before modern day psychology did. Like, they're just now starting to understand what she knew back in the mid-70s. So she was ahead of her time. She was an amazing woman, and I highly recommend You Can Heal Your Life and You Can Heal Your Body. Or Heal Your Body, not You Can Heal Your Body. And like I said, if you're already tapped into meditation and you know how to do affirmations and mantras, you can just get this book, and it will help you solve a lot of problems. And if you want to start from ground zero and actually figure a lot of this out, because this book is very comprehensive with what it teaches, I highly recommend it. The new one does not look like this. This is an older copy from like the 90s. But I just recommend it. Again, this is not medical advice, because I'm not a doctor. I don't know what you have going on. But they are very good to help with the mental part of illness and just life in general. You can actually find a lot of ways to work through stress, work through anxiety, work through depression, if you're willing to be honest with yourself and be truthful. And that's the big one. And it's not with somebody else. Who cares what they think? It's being truthful with yourself and understanding that, yes, the ego is there. It has a purpose, but sometimes it gets a little out of control and then it starts to affect you as well. And she goes through parts of that in these 2 books. So hopefully that wasn't too convoluted for anybody, but I do recommend both of them. And if you choose to get them, pick up a journal. You can pick up just a regular old spiral journal from the grocery store if you don't want to spend money on a big one. I have literally hundreds of 3-ring and spiral notepads all over my house because each one has a different subject, and I have one specifically for this, and I filled all 70 some odd pages just going through this book one time. So it's something I recommend, and I recommend it because you need to be truthful, but you also need to have a record. When you write it down, you can see beginning to end, this is where I started, and wow, I've come a long ways. So it's a way to help you understand that none of this is permanent. It's all just a process. It's a cycle. We have to work through it. So I highly recommend journaling when you do this. So other than that, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like, subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And if you have comments, good or bad, drop them in the comments section. Just be respectful is all I ask. And I will talk to you guys in a future video.